H.G. Wells, in his classic science fiction novel War of the Worlds, wove real places in Surrey into the plot of his story of an invasion from space. He chose this beautiful spot, Horsell Common near Woking, for the site of the landing of his Martians.
Now it's the clump. It's got some under the gas pipe.
There seems to be quite a drop there. We don't appreciate the hill on this side. The other side is
Damewell Hill Clump.
not very safe.
The spot where, according to H.G. Wells in War of the Worlds, the Martians landed.
A little crowd of perhaps 20 people surrounding a huge hole in which the cylinder lay. I have already described the appearance of that colossal bulk embedded in the ground. The turf and gravel about it seemed charred as if by a sudden explosion. No doubt its impact had caused a flash of fire. Henderson and Ogilvy were not there. I think they perceived that nothing was to be done for the present and had gone away to breakfast at Henderson's house.
Bacon and eggs.
There were four or five boys sitting on the edge of the pit with their feet dangling and amusing themselves until I stopped them by throwing stones at the giant mass. After I had spoken to them about it, they began playing at touch in and out of a group of bystanders. Among these were a couple of cyclists, a jogging gardener I employed sometimes, a girl carrying a baby, Greg the butcher and his little boy, and 2 or 3 loafers and golf caddies who were accustomed to hang about the railway station.
It's marvellous. Such a local colour. He must actually have come out here one Sunday afternoon, wasn't he?
There was very little talking. Few of the common people in England had anything but the vaguest astronomical ideas in those days. Most of them were staring quietly at the big table-like end of the cylinder, which was still as Ogilvy and Henderson had left it. I fancy the popular expectation of a heap of charged corpses was disappointed at this inanimate bulk. Some went away while I was still there, and other people came up. I clambered into the pit and fancied I heard a faint movement under my feet. The top had certainly ceased to rotate. His near approach. A stirring noise within its cylinder he described to the unequal cooling of its surface, for at that time it had not occurred to him that it might be hollow. He remained standing at the edge of the pit that the thing had made for itself, staring at its strange appearance, astonished chiefly at its unusual shape and colour, and dimly perceiving even then some evidence of its design in its arrival. The early morning was wonderfully still, and the sun, just clearing the pine trees towards Weybridge, was already warm. He did not remember hearing any birds that morning. There was certainly no breeze stirring, and the only sounds were the faint movements from within the cindery cylinder. He was not all alone on the common. Then suddenly he noticed, with a start, that some of the grey clinker, the ashy incrustation that covered the meteorite, was falling off the circular edge of the end. It was dropping off in flakes and raining down upon the sand. A large piece suddenly came off and fell with a sharp noise that brought his heart into his mouth. Chapter 4. The cylinder unscrews. There were a number of voices raised, and some sort of struggle appeared to be going on about the pit. Strange imaginings passed through my mind. As I drew nearer, I heard Stent's voice, "Keep back! Keep back!" A boy came running towards me. "It's a-moving," he said to me as he passed. "A screwing, and a screwing out. I don't like it. I'm going home, I am." I went on to the crowd. There were rarely, I should think, 200 or 300 people elbowing and jostling one another. The 1 or 2 ladies there being by no means the least active. "He's fallen in the pit," someone cried. "Keep back," said several. The crowd swayed a little, and I elbowed my way through. Everyone seemed greatly excited. I heard a peculiar humming sound from the pit. "I say," said Ogilvy, "help keep these idiots back. We don't know what's in the confounded thing, you know." I saw a young man, a shop assistant in Woking, I believe he was, standing on the cylinder and trying to scramble out of the hole again. The crowd had pushed him in. The end of the cylinder was being screwed out from within. Nearly 2 feet of shining screw projected. Somebody blundered against me, and I narrowly missed being pitched onto the top of the screw. I turned, and as I did so, the screw must have come out, and the lid of the cylinder fell upon the gravel with a ringing concussion. I struck my elbow into the person behind me and turned my head towards the thing again. For a moment, that circular cavity seemed perfectly black. I had the sunset in my eyes. I think everyone expected to see a man emerge, possibly something a little unlike us terrestrial men, but in all essentials a man. I know I did. But, looking, I presently saw something stirring within the shadow. Greyish billowy movements, one above another, and then 2 luminous discs like eyes, then something resembling a little grey snake about the thickness of a walking stick, coiled up out of the writhing middle and wriggled in the air towards me, and then another. A sudden chill came over me. There was a loud shriek from the woman behind. I half turned, keeping my eyes fixed upon the cylinder still, from which other tentacles were now projecting, and began pushing my way back from the edge of the pit. I saw astonishment giving place to horror on the faces of the people about me. I heard inarticulate exclamations on all sides. There was a general movement backward. I saw the shopman struggling still on the edge of the pit. I found myself alone, and I saw people on the other side of the pit running off, Stent among them. I looked again at the cylinder. An ungovernable terror gripped me. I stood petrified and staring. A big greyish rounded bulk, the size perhaps of a bear, was rising slowly and painfully out of the cylinder. As it bulged up and caught the light, it glistened like wet leather. 2 large dark-coloured eyes were regarding me steadfastly. It was rounded and had, one might say, a face. There was a mouth under the eyes, the brim of which quivered and panted and dropped saliva. The body heaved and pulsated convulsively. A lank, tentacular appendage gripped the edge of the cylinder. Another swayed in the air. Those who have never seen a living Martian can scarcely imagine the horror of their appearance. The peculiar V-shaped mouth with its pointed upper lip, the absence of brow ridges, the absence of a chin beneath the wedge-like lower lip, the incessant quivering of the mouth, the gorgon groups of tentacles, the tumultuous breathing of the lungs in a strange atmosphere, the evident heaviness and painfulness of movement due to the greater gravitational energy of the Earth. Above all, the extraordinary intensity of the immense eyes culminated in an effect akin to nausea. There was something fungoid in the oily brown skin, something in the clumsy deliberation of their tedious movements, unspeakably terrible. Even at this first encounter, this first glimpse, I was overcome with disgust and dread. First made my heart jump. The monster was already raising the case generating the heat ray as the first shell burst 6 yards above the hood. I gave a cry of astonishment. I saw and thought nothing of the other 4 Martian monsters. My attention was riveted upon the nearer incident. Simultaneously 2 other shells burst in the air near the body as the hood twisted around in time to receive, but not in time to dodge, the 4th shell. The shell burst clean in the face of the thing. The hood bulged, flashed, was whirled off in a dozen tattered fragments of red flesh and glittering metal. "Hit!" shouted I, with something between a scream and a cheer. I heard answering shouts from the people in the water about me. I could have leapt out of the water with that momentary exultation. The decapitated colossus reeled like a drunken giant, but it did not fall over. It recovered its balance by a miracle, and, no longer heeding its steps, and with the camera that fired the heat ray now rigidly upheld, it reeled swiftly upon Shepperton. The living intelligence, the Martian within the hood, was slain and splashed to the 4 winds of heaven, and the thing was now but a mere intricate device of metal whirling to destruction. It drove along in a straight line, incapable of guidance. It struck the tower of Shepperton Church, smashing it down as the impact of a battering ram might have done, swerved aside, blundered on, and collapsed with a tremendous impact in the river out of my sight. A violent explosion shook the air, and a spout of water, steam, mud, and shattered metal shot far up into the sky. As the camera of the heat ray hit the water, the latter had incontinently flashed into steam. In another moment a huge wave, like a muddy tidal ball, but almost scaldingly hot, came sweeping round the bend upstream. I saw people straggling shorewards, and heard their screaming and shouting faintly above the seething and roar of the Martian's collapse. For the moment I heeded nothing of the heat, forgot the patent need of self-preservation. I splashed through the tumultuous water, pushing aside a man in black to do so, until I could see round the bend. Half a dozen deserted boats pitched aimlessly upon the confusion of the waves. The fallen Martian came into sight downstream, lying across the river, and for the most part submerged.
It gives the full flavour of it,
Talk
doesn't
about the
it?
imagination running
Yeah,
riot.
yeah.
It does more than that.
But you'd think he'd actually witnessed it.
Oh, yes.
The poor people faintly screaming and
Yes.
dispassionately describing it. Wonderful.
Despite its choice as a setting for this creepy story, however, Horsell Common has a very pleasant atmosphere, and Damewell Hill is the meeting point of several interesting lays.
Oh, here's your pond, Jimmy.
Not far away is a small standing stone which I found some years ago, and which has at least 2 lays going through it, one to the subconsciously sighted Woking Mosque. The stone is leaning in the direction of the mosque site.
Marker stone, it doesn't need to have any markings on it. It's just
That's right, it's just there, isn't it?
I think it's lovely.
Well, it had a string going on. It's exactly the direction it's pointing at. And in that way, I think it goes. Does it go through a tumulus, Jimmy, and another church?
I'll have a look at the map in a moment. Yeah, I think it goes through quite a few points, yes.
You know,
But the choice of site for the Woking Mosque, was that governed by anything like
I don't
this?
know. Jimmy thinks it was subconsciously sighted on some old sacred site.
Oh, would you?
Well washed out.
Not in use anymore.
No, we've had so much rain recently
Oh,
that
right.
it would compact.
They flooded.
It compacts the sand and the... Yeah, I'd say that's an old enslip by looking at. Had a guess.
There's a foxhole there. A foxhole is messy.
Oh, I've never seen a foxhole.
Got the badger set with you.
Tidy.
And if you take the arnica tablets going straight, they're very good for making no injury.
Yeah, well, there's a new one.
We're up there, so we're going to come down the roundabout to go up to Chobham.
And then, there's the earth, there's the tree. Oh, that's where we're going.
Yeah, that looks sort of interesting, that one.
Yeah.
I know nothing about it.
The clump of Scots pines on Staple Hill is still a symbol of Chobham, even though the trees were felled many years ago. A photograph taken in 1905 shows what the clump originally looked like.
Chobham Church.
And the font dates from the 16th century. It's only one of 3 wooden fonts in the country. AD 1712. St Lawrence, who was martyred for his faith in Rome in 257. Here for more than 900 years Christians have worshipped. 1539, Bishop of Worcester. 1543, deprived by Edward VI and imprisoned in the Fleet. 1551, restored by Mary. 1553, Archbishop of York. Oh no, I'm doing it the wrong way around. Archbishop of York, 1555. Lord Chancellor, 1556, proclaimed Elizabeth, 1558, but refused to accept the Reformation settlement. Deprived and confined in the Tower, where he died in 1578, lived at Chobham Park, 1571, 1573, 1574, buried in the chancel of Chobham Church, an upright and brave man, firm in his own convictions but tolerant of the religious opinions of others. Practice.
Yeah, is that?
Chameleon.
Oh gosh,
Scratched eye at Chobham Church.
They want to be dead yet. Is that some
scribble up.
Yes.
This monument to Queen Victoria on Chobham Common is at the junction of 2 very interesting leys. The first was a strange phantom line seen on the aerial photograph of Chertsey displayed in the entrance of Chertsey Library. Although prominent seen from a distance, it vanishes when you look closer, You can't determine any features which are comprising it. To the west, the alignment runs along the striking half-mile stretch of straight road in Shepperton called Green Lane, which goes to the multi-junction by the station. The name indicates the road was probably an old track. To the west, the line goes through several churches in the Kingston and Wimbledon areas. In the other direction, it runs alongside a track beside a wood on Horsell Common to a spot-marked multi-junction and to the Queen Victoria Monument. The other lay goes through St James Parish Church, Weybridge, and 2 clumps of pines which can be seen to be in alignment with it. The view of the church spire from the second clump of pines. Then goes through the Hillcrest Estate and the War Memorial at the Temple Market Junction. In the other direction, it passes just behind this church at Longcross. The line almost certainly passes through this mound behind the church, thought to be a tumulus, but some doubt was cast on this on the field trip. From the mound, another clump can be seen, but this would not be on the line we are following. Both the clump and the mound are on Ministry of Defence land. When we arrived at the Victoria Monument, Lionel found the site seemed to have a bank and ditch round it, almost like a miniature hill fort. There is no mention of this on the map.
Down into the ditch.
Down into a ditch.
Now I'm in the ditch. The ditch runs along there and along there. And now I'm coming up. So now I've come up out of it.
Rampart, down into the ditch.
Is that what it is?
This is the
Up
entrance
again.
way, Lionel thinks, and it comes down here. And then the ditch is in both directions here. Along here and like that.
Right.
And we get a dowsing reaction as well here. The energy swirling around.
Something I'm in, because this is quite a substantial bit of digging here, so it must be in the book somewhere.
Which book? The book in the car?
Yeah,
It's not in there, I looked.
I can't believe that.
Memory of Sub-Lieutenant somebody Mullins, who was killed in an air flight, aged 19.
Despite the fact we were told the mound was modern, it is in an area called Barrow Hills. Longcross Church is on the paw of Mary Cain's great dog, so we were looking for dog significance.
Well, he knew it was something to do with the dog, didn't he? His coat of arms. That's brilliant. So a dog with its tongue sticking out on the top of a helmet. Brilliant.
Dogs and claws.
Yeah.
And horseshoes.
5 claws, but dogs have only got 5 claws on their feet, Lionel, so that's right. I wonder whether they're the hounds of hell.
In search of an earthwork on Horsell Common, on a different lay.
Line with the claw, isn't it? If you follow the curve of the dog's paw down. So it might be the ball with which the dog was playing. There is the dog's paw, and there's its claw. And if it's playing with the ball, it will just have rolled the ball along.
Right.
Mary Cain's Zodiac dog.
There's a ditch going round here.
Oh, there's a ditch here, look. In the hollow. I'll go and stand in it.
Yes.
I think this is the ditch.
Yes.
The ditch. I think the ditch comes up from those trees, and it comes up like this with a slight earthwork coming like this, and the ditch goes along here, and it goes round like this. And it goes right round. I think this is the earthwork. and then you come up inside it like this,
Right.
I think. Maybe. You think? All along here. Round there, and where those trees are, those rowan trees. Then right round to where we were before. And where we were before is just where he's thrown that red plane.
Right.
So I think we found the Albury Bottom camp.
Right.
If we'd kept straight on that path, we'd have come to it. Perhaps.
Well, that's not what my map suggested to me, but
Well, it was the nearest thing to a series of roughly round ditches.
yeah, right.
But we could be completely wrong, Lana.
To return to the question of Mars, an incident which seemed to have associations with the planet was seen from here, Newlands Corner near Guildford, in June 1967. As it happens, this is not a very great distance from Horsell Common, where the fictional landing was set. Squadron Leader Shipwright was walking on the downs with his wife when they both saw a white object moving in a field below them, about a mile away. And he saw what he first thought was a white horse galloping in a field, and he was actually looking down on it into a field about a mile away, because it's right on top of the hill here. You can see for many miles. And he saw this thing, and then he looked at it, and he saw that it wasn't a horse. It was either spherical or very slightly egg-shaped, and it was moving up and down very rapidly in this field. Watched it for a bit, then it stopped and started moving slowly at a right angle to its previous path. It came to a hedge, which he thought, well, if this was a balloon which had got loose, then it would be tangled up in this hedge. But in actual fact, it got to this hedge and rose up and over this belt of trees, and he eventually lost interest in it and went off to have their lunch, but he didn't actually see it disappear.
Oh, that's
What
an ending! What an ending!
Must have been an exciting ending.
But anyway, he contacted me about it, and a few days later, my father and him and me went to this field, and we found the place where this thing had been moving backwards and forwards very quickly, north, south, south, north direction, and we found a scatter of pieces of what appeared to be sandstone. Most of them very small, but one of them was much larger and seemed to have some kind of pattern engraved in the top. Now this we took home with us, and we've actually got here, if you like to come and...
Oh, yes, yes. Let's just fold this up, shall we?
The paperwork, Wow.
Oh,
Must be a room.
good gracious.
Oh, and you never found what could make that. Normally, if it had been a farm machinery scratched it, it wouldn't have made these sort of very smooth curve. And we left. There was another piece of the stone, a smaller piece, which was the same as this when we got it. Was left out in the weather, and it discoloured very quickly. So we don't think this could have been there very long. And we don't know what. But this was.
It means going this way. It's an arrow.
This was actually on the place where this was seen, moving very quickly.
What my Geiger counter to see if it's any activity there. Oh. There's nothing on the other side, is there?
No, there doesn't seem to be. It wasn't embedded in the ground at all.
Oh, September, there, look, that. Yeah, that sort of ridge there doesn't look quite natural, does it?
early Mariner spacecraft sent back our first fleeting pictures
and Tidbinbilla, Australia, a mysterious glowing object was hovering over Canberra at a distance of 5 to 10 miles north of Canberra Airport. It was first sighted at 10:50 a.m. by 6 members of the control tower crew at Canberra Airport, who continued to observe it for 40 minutes. Its altitude was estimated at 5,000 feet. Meanwhile, the mysterious object was seen by 2 commercial pilots, some members of the RAF base at Fairbairn, and so many civilians that the airport switchboard was jammed with callers, and a special man was assigned to deal with inquiries.